This is a new video I wanted to put on my channel. It's my experience reading the entire Quran, and basically I'm just going to be reading you the notes that I put together. It might take me a second because I write sloppy and it's all kind of jotted up, but basically I'm just going to be reading it. So alright, before I begin this endeavor, I did believe Christianity to be the true religion, so I can't tell you I wasn't biased before I started it, but I can tell you that I set myself on this mission with 100% open mind, willing to be totally fair in my review of this book. After reading the Quran entirely over a 4-day period, I'm a slow reader. I still believe Christianity to be the true religion. I'm not going to be real emotional or anything because it's not just coming. I'm reading it off a piece of paper, so just give you a heads up. This is my only, it's hard to get on a phone, so in this detailed review of the Quran, I'm going to also be telling you how this book has changed my view of the Islam religion and Muslim people. But first, I want to give you a detailed description of my mood and general mentality through the 4-day ordeal, so you will know what to expect yourself if you ever take upon the challenge of reading the entire Quran. I don't say challenges, and I'm challenging you because I believe a true Christian might consider this witchcraft, rightly so, and I believe Christians came together in the book of Acts and burned material like this, Acts 19:19, for a reason. For an example for us all to follow. When I say challenge, I mean to your nerves and sanity. I compare reading the entire Quran to climbing Mount Everest. It's a nightmare. You torture yourself all the way through it just to be able to say you did it. Bragging rights are the only thing you will gain from reading this entire book. I keep saying entire because you got to read the whole book from front to back to know how garbage it is. I'm just being real. Because I wouldn't consider blatant lies and random, inconsistent anti-Jewish, anti-Christian propaganda to be knowledge you will ever need again. Again, I compare reading the entire Quran to a female giving birth to a stillborn baby, and I'm being dead serious. After lugging around a huge stomach with a painful birth, you're left with only sorrow and misery. While pushing yourself through this challenge, you will find yourself periodically checking the thickness of the pages read versus unread while having thoughts racing to your mind such as, how much more of this can I take? And how many different ways can you say the same thing over and over? Probably the best way I could get you to see what it's like reading the entire Quran, go rip out a page of any bad novel and read it 400 times in a row. Reading the entire Quran is like running a marathon knowing you're going to be last place with no celebration across the finish line. I would bet a good portion of the Muslims haven't read the entire Quran themselves. Alright, I'm on page 2. Hold on one sec. Now that you understand a little of what I went through during this 4-day ordeal, in order to bring you this review, I hope you appreciate it. Please enjoy my review. Alright, the Quran claims to be Holy Spirit inspired and is sure to let you know many times in many different ways that this book/revelation are the only way to heaven. But the majority of its teachings just aren't logical. Identifying faulty logic is recognizing errors in reasoning. There are too many errors and inconsistencies in the author's reasoning in this book to even slightly confuse the book as being a logical truth. They claim in their book that Christians and Jews dispute over Abraham, but that isn't so. Their very much newer doctrine and beliefs are all that differ. Jews and Christians both agree Abraham gave the covenant to Isaac's descendants. They start off by bringing Ishmael into the picture as if his bloodline would have the covenant. Chapter 2, verse 125 states, "And we covenanted with Abraham and Ishmael that they should sanctify my house." But they soon abandon that avenue and attempt to weave themselves directly into the foundations of Isaac and his descendants as well. After reading the entire Quran, I now believe Muhammad to be nothing more than a created character, and I also believe the Quran was written by many authors in a shorter period of time than what Muslims claim. They say 23 years, I say 23 days max. At the end of this review, I will mention many anti-Jewish / anti-Christian verses which I had underlined as I read the book, so you can also see and understand the true purpose of this book. I don't know if I have time to do that, but I'm going to try to send those the purpose of this book is to send those who follow it straight to hell. You will find the two biggest lies of all time in this book. The first and biggest lie that is mentioned over and over, probably about 20 times, is Allah has begotten no son. All they do is attack Christians in that book. It's not even a religion, it's crazy. The second biggest bold-faced lie of all time is chapter 17, verse 88. If the whole of mankind and jinns were to gather together to produce the like of this Quran, they could not produce the like thereof, even if they backed up each other with help and support. That's clearly a lie. Anyway, I found myself constantly getting angry at the extremely poor quality of this book, while being in disbelief that anyone could take this book serious. But that's only a proven testimony of the Bible, which made no secret of the blinding that the devil would be allowed to use on those who reject truth. I am going on page 3. It's really an embarrassing sight to watch as these authors ride any side of the fence they can to try and win arguments amongst themselves with no care at all whether they completely contradict themselves or not. They claim chapter 39 verse 23 the Quran to be a consistent book, but the only thing consistent about this book are the inconsistencies which you constantly see throughout its pages. When you read this book, you will more than likely ask yourself, who do y'all claim to be? You claim Abraham wasn't a Jew, and you take cheap shots at Jews throughout your book, such as chapter 5, verse 41. The Jews say, the Jews will believe any lie, but at the same time, you hijack all their Jewish stories and prophets as if you're trying to make yourself into a Jew. You tried to paint all the old prophets, such as Noah and Moses, as being Muslim, and at the same time claim chapter 39, verse 12, Muhammad to be the first to submit to Islam or Allah's will. The authors of this book have claimed to have the latest revelation in a series of 3 books, chapter 3, verse 3, after the book of Moses and the Gospel, but they prove to know nothing about Jews or Christians. For example, they tell blatant lies on the Jewish people, such as chapter 4, verse 157. The Jews say, we killed Christ Jesus, the son of Mary. That's an obvious lie. The Jews were blinded by God not to be able to see that he was Christ, which Paul stated was for everyone's benefit and that all Israel would be saved in the end. They should have also fact-checked their statements with real Christians, as they proved to know nothing of Christianity as well. The author of a few of the chapters seemed to be inconsistently more tolerable with Christianity than the authors of other chapters, claiming here and there that some Christians are okay and will make it to the garden. They call it the garden, which is heaven, but they are sure to tell you that those Christians prostrate themselves and or believe in the prophet Muhammad. You'll never catch a genuine Christian, for example Paul, who helped coin the term Christian in the book of Acts, bowing in prostration to a man-made monster claimed to be sacred. Not only is it common sense, but the Bible states it's an abomination to prostrate yourself in prayer to objects God created, such as the sun, and it also rightly mocks those who pray to wood, etc. So why would God ask you to bow towards a man-made mosque? He wouldn't. They claim in their book that it's the others who pray for show, but they pray this way only to stand out and feel they're holier than else. They're holier than outside egos. You will surely not find a genuine Christian accepting false prophets like Muhammad, who deny the resurrection of God's Son Jesus. Chapter 5, verse 72, they blaspheme who say God is Christ, son of Mary. How is that when the prophets in the word you claim many times to agree with, chapter 37, verse 37, chapter 5, verse 68, etc., prophesy God would come in the flesh through his Son? You call it blasphemy to attribute a Son to God, but that's the main requirement of Christianity. Although their tolerance of Christianity varies from one chapter to another, the majority of the time, chapter 5, verse 51, they condemn even friendship with them. One thing that really ticked me off was their lack of fairness. I can take my shirt off. Hi. Their lack of fairness. They do not practice what they preach. For example, many times they instruct their followers to ask for a sign if anyone ever encounters them with differing doctrines. But at the same time, if they are asked themselves for a sign, chapter 13, verse 27, they are to say to them, Allah truly leads to stray whom He wills. They constantly mention signs with a capital S, as in the signs of God in nature, etc. True enough, you can see God in nature, in the signs of nature, but that doesn't mean that your messenger is legit by any means. To them, a believer is someone who accepts that there is a Creator and rejects Jesus, chapter 4, verse 150, and rejects Jesus and the Trinity. So basically, their believer would be our unbeliever. Islam is no more than a street gang with Satan as its leader. Allah is not God. God had a son. Allah claims no son, so technically, he is of the Antichrist according to the Bible. I realize they don't have another word for God over there, but they need to fix that. That's their problem. This is why God was not translated to English for the rest of the Quran. They don't have God in them. They dislike seeing His name. They try to recruit new members with the promise of protection from fellow members. Chapter 59, verse 12, for example, essentially telling them that others won't really ride with them. They let you know that they are ride or die, and they even tell you to ask Jews if they want to die, and they mock the Jews' probable response of no, chapter 62, verse 7. They preach, hey, author this book, and they love bashing other people and religions, taking every cheap shot they possibly can. This definitely ain't the good book. They claim crazy things like chapter 7, verse 179, many men were created for hell. And also, they remind you over and over that if Allah willed, He could unblind their eyes, but He doesn't want to. And, hold on one second. I'm going to page 5. They constantly tell you to oppose us non-believers, going as far as to say that in the last days, you won't find any Muslims having anything to do with us, but we will pretty much be complete enemies, as if this is an ultimate acceptable goal to strive for. Basically, they believe God intentionally created the earth as a war zone for them, and they tell them things like fight the cause of Allah, and even chapter 9, verse 52, tell your enemies you can have glory and martyrdom. I want to show you their hypocrisy when claiming to show no partiality to any prophets, which is in chapter 2, verse 136, etc. There's couple of those. As far as their messenger goes, I would bet anything he never existed in this reality, and I was very disappointed at the lack of history, stories, and information in general on this prophet, or God's messenger, who didn't appear to do anything other than listen to Gabriel talk crap about Jesus. But I was perplexed at the podium this prophet was placed on, despite constantly being portrayed as a mere mortal equal to other prophets. Chapter 41, verse 6, etc. He is also being hoisted to Christ-like status, such as 57, verse 7. Believe in Allah and His messenger, and the messenger invites you to believe in your Lord, and has indeed taken your covenant. And they even elevate him to God's status, commanding a fifth of worshipers sacrifice to him as well as God, and making ridiculous statements like chapter 33, verse 6, the prophet is closer to the believer than oneself. Okay, so now you see how they exalted a prophet who performed no miracles. Let's see how if they give Jesus the same treatment. Chapter 5, verse 75 states, Christ, son of Mary, was no more than a messenger Many were the messengers that passed away before him. His mother was a woman of truth, and they both ate food daily. They are attempting to portray him only as immortal, even though they admit the Virgin Mary conceived through the power of God. Chapter 19, verse 20, chapter 3, verse 46. But continuing, they follow up with this insult. Chapter 5, verse 76. Will you worship besides Allah something which has no power to either harm or benefit you? Those are strong words for a prophet who, they admit, open the eyes of the blind and raise the dead to life. Chapter 3, verse 49. Chapter 5, verse 110. And also, y'all confirmed the gospel and Torah as being legit many times. Chapter 32, verse 23. Chapter 3, verse 3. You call Jesus the Christ in your own Quran many times. Chapter 5, verse 75, for example. Do you even know what the Christ is and his purpose? Muslims are without excuse. They were granted the ability of discerning right from wrong, but chose wrong. Let me tell you another major issue this book has. Everyone knows that the main reason of following a religion in general is not for the benefits of this earthly reality, but for the hope of an eternal reward in an afterlife. So what is wrong with the Quran's many descriptions of heaven and hell? 1, inconsistencies, and 2, very dated. They claim hell is a place of fire with a capital F, but they also claim it's got plenty of boiling water for you to drink, and even trees with horrible food. Some verses claim you will try to drink the water, but it will by no means go past your throat, while other verses claim the water will not only go past your throat, but will cut up your guts. 47, verse 15. They also claim this water is boiling hot, but also freezing cold at the same time. Those are just a few inconsistencies. A few of the examples of what I mean by dated. Their description of heaven glows with things like rivers of milk that always taste the same. I guess that might sound good to people back then who didn't have store-bought milk. If someone offered me a glass of milk they just scooped out of a river, I'm going to tell them I'm good, actually. Their description is followed by, if you don't believe, or I'm going to test description to be accurate, recite for us a better heaven. 1, this isn't poetry.